No more TSA lines at airports and Mexican sugarcane Coca-Cola. Some big changes are coming your way. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now.
Tonight, the first ever Hill Nation Summit, and the hottest topic?
Do you think that they were not telling the whole truth?
I don't know. I do believe on lots of things the Biden administration wasn't square with the American people.
President Trump's irritation over the Epstein files. Can he quell the ongoing MAGA rebellion? Plus, Mr. Mamdani goes to Washington. Did top Democrats greet New York City's likely next mayor with new hope or like ballot box poison?
Do you feel that the left side of the party, that progressive side, the Zohran Mamdanis, do you think they're supported by the Democratic Party right now?
It depends on how you define the Democratic Party.
I'll speak to someone who was in the meeting. And later, we return to East Palestine, where new documents appear to show skewed testing and cherry-picked data, concealing the true level of toxins. Just how bad was it, and how bad is it still?
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Great to have you here. We have lots to get to, but we begin tonight in Washington, D.C., where some of the biggest names in government gathered for the first ever Hill Nation Summit today, a partnership between NewsNation and our colleagues at The Hill. We've got big headlines from former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, top Senate Democrat Mark Warner, and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, who sounded the alarm on China and that country's threat to our electrical grid and water systems. Let's first go to the Hill's Michael Schnell, who today moderated many of the sessions. Michael, you were there. Lots of names, lots of headlines. Break it down for us.
Yeah, hey, Elizabeth, good evening. A lot of news out of Washington, D.C. tonight, over throughout the day from this Hill Summit, where a number of our reporters sat down with members of Congress, lawmakers, and administration officials to talk about a lot of different topics. I personally spoke to Congressman John James. He's a Republican from Michigan, currently serving in the House, who's running to be the next governor of Michigan. I pressed him on why he thinks he is the right person for that job, and if he has any apprehension about President Trump's tariffs, particularly those auto tariffs, given he hails from Michigan, which is the automobile capital. I also spoke to Congressman Byron Donalds. He's a Republican from Florida. He is additionally running for governor in the Sunshine State. I asked him about that bid, as well as some issues in the House chamber right now dealing with cryptocurrency legislation. And I also asked him a lot about Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell. Byron Donalds sits on the Financial Services Committee. He previously worked in banking and the finance industries, so he had an interesting view into the matter. But one of the most fascinating interviews today had to be Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. She had sat down with our Blake Berman to discuss DHS and TSA and everything you could think of throughout this conversation. There were two bits, though, that really caught our eye. First, talking about the electrical grid, and second, talking about what Americans do every day walking through the airport. Take a listen.
I would say our critical infrastructure is extremely vulnerable. One thing that the Department of Homeland Security did not do well under the last administration was to protect our electrical grid. We did not protect people's personal information. China proved that they can hack into our electrical system and shut it down. They can shut down our water system. The future of an airport, where I'm looking to go, is that you walk in the door with your carry-on suitcase, you walk through a scanner and go right to your flight.
Just like that?
Takes you 1 minute to get there.
How far away are we till that?
I'm working with several different companies with technologies to give us competitive bids on what they actually can do. And you will see us pilot this at a couple of airports before it gets implemented nationwide.
So, Elizabeth, pretty relatable, waiting in those security lines to try to get through to your gate. So, Kristi Noem signaling there could be a change on the horizon.
If only. I hope so. Michael, Jeffrey Epstein was also the talk of the town there on the stage. You heard from two lawmakers at the summit about that controversy.
Yeah, so of course the Jeffrey Epstein saga has been consuming Washington, particularly the Republican Party, as folks debate whether or not those files should be released. What happened to Epstein when he was in jail? We were able to ask two key lawmakers about this topic. First, Congressman Jim Jordan. He is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. As we talk about potential investigations and testimony from some people involved with Epstein, that would likely fall under Jordan's purview. We got to ask him about that. We also spoke to Congressman Ro Khanna. He's a Republican from California. He sits on a number of committees that would look into this. He also commented on the Epstein saga as we're seeing this effort by Democrats to embrace this and push for the release of the files as it continues to fracture the Republican Party. Take a listen to what Chairman Jordan and Congressman Khanna had to say.
We think we've got dates already scheduled later this summer. Well, they'll be in front of the committee, and I've told everyone, you can ask them, you know how those things go.
Yeah.
Republicans will have questions for them, Democrats will have questions for them on this issue and a host of other issues. And so we've already been working on that. And I think that's how it should proceed. And we've, like I said, been working on scheduling this. We think it's going to happen as soon as we get back from the August break.
What matters is that he's not releasing it. He's not exposing it. His whole thing was, I'm going to take these folks down. I'm going to take down and show people how corrupt government is, and it's not working for you. And that's why I think this has such resonance on both the left and the right, because there's a sense in both sides that life hasn't really been fair in America.
So, Elizabeth, President Trump has been trying to persuade Republicans to essentially drop the issue, calling it a waste of time. But Chairman Jordan right there saying they are looking at dates to have further conversations about the Jeffrey Epstein files, essentially signaling that this story unlikely to disappear anytime soon.
Yeah, that's not going to happen by all accounts. Michael Schnell with Republican Jim Jordan and Democrat Ro Khanna. Thank you so much. The Jeffrey Epstein issue is creating a schism in MAGA world. President Trump is now going after his own base, attacking some of his own supporters over their obsession with the convicted sex offender. The president says they're just falling for what he calls a hoax that he now claims was started by Democrats.
It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats, and some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work.
Does that mean that you're effectively disowning any supporters who are now calling?
I lost a lot of faith in certain people. Yeah, I lost because they got duped by the Democrats.
That followed a raging post on Truth Social this morning in which Trump wrote in part, quote, "My past supporters have bought into this BS, hook, line, and sinker, and they haven't learned their lesson and probably never will, even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years." Now, as much as President Trump would like this to go away, this Epstein controversy does not appear to be doing so. And giving the matter more urgency is the dissatisfaction from the American public. According to a new poll out today, more than 6 in 10 voters disapprove of the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein investigation. Republicans in particular are split. 40% approve, 36% disapprove. Let's get reaction now from NewsNation political editor Chris Starwell, host of The Hill Sunday. Chris, great to have you here. So Trump is accusing Democrats of stoking this conspiracy, but it was President Trump himself who said for years there was a secret file that the government was covering up. His own son, Don Jr., tweeted out during the campaign, "Show us the Epstein files now. Why are they protecting this scumbag?"
The president was careful around the Jeffrey Epstein stuff. He was notably careful for a guy who said that Ted Cruz's father maybe was part of killing JFK,
right.
For somebody who said Barack Obama was a secret Kenyan, for a person who, with political rivals and in sensitive situations, who said Joe Scarborough maybe had something to do with the death of an intern. Donald Trump showed restraint around the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, and it was because, I assume, he and Epstein were running buddies back in the day, right? In the 90s in Palm Beach and Manhattan. They were men about town. They were friends. They ran in the same circles. And Trump didn't want to get too close. And we remember when Maxwell was pleading guilty and going to prison, they asked the president at the time, well, what do you think about that? And he said, well, I wish her well. And he stepped back. These were all signals to the MAGA universe. We're not doing this one, guys, right? This isn't one for us. This isn't like Hillary Clinton's servers. This is one that we're going to tread lightly around. And where he finds himself now, when I asked Jim Jordan about this, Jim Jordan was non-committal about whether he believed the Biden administration's findings that corroborated what the first Trump administration said. But I don't think he believed the Biden administration. I don't think Jim Jordan took the Biden administration's word for what happened here. So when the president tells, whether it's Jim Jordan or whomever, stop talking about this, don't ask about this, I think he's asking the impossible.
Well, it's interesting, though. Jim Jordan told you, I'm going to call Pam Bondi here, and she's going to answer every single question about this, which is essentially what should happen if you want this to go away. I mean, the only way at this point to handle this is to release everything you can and answer every single question everyone has.
Well, there were two realities. There were two possible realities. Reality one was the Occam's razor answer was that whether it was Donald Trump Jr. or Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or whomever, that they had exaggerated what was going on. They had overhyped and overblown the conspiracy for electoral purpose, that it was good. You could score points on Democrats and say bad stuff about the Clintons and do this stuff. And then you get in office and you say, well, womp womp. Sorry, guys, it's not actually that way. And what can we say? Sorry, we'll get them next time. There's that version. And what Democrats are doing about that is very cynical, right? Because they believe what the Biden administration said. They believe that there's no there there. They just want to force Republicans to say it. They want them to say that it was a scam. The other reality is that there is something being covered up and there is something being hidden. The president is trying to offer a third way out for Republicans, which is there is a cover-up, but it's a virtuous cover-up. We're preventing fake things from the Democrats, from the bad people, from coming out because it'll hurt people. And if we think back to the infamous interview that the then candidate, now president, did when he was asked, will you release the files from the Kennedy assassination? Will you release the files on the... Yes, yes, yes. Epstein. Well, there's fake stuff in there and it could hurt people a great deal.
Right,
so
but members
this is
of his
where
cabinet,
the president finds himself now.
Right, but members of his own cabinet were saying quite the opposite. I'm going to release those files. There's a secret file. He didn't kill himself. And now find themselves in the position of saying what the Biden administration is correct. He did, in fact, commit suicide. Or they're covering.
Or they can say what the president said, which is, thank goodness that we've stopped the release of these files because it contained fraudulent information planted by the deep state, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're not releasing it, but we're doing a good. Our lack of transparency is virtuous lack of transparency. I don't know if that washes, but it may be enough. It may be a narrow enough space where enough of the folks in the cabinet can hide.
So here's what Politico writes today, quote, this blunder was entirely self-inflicted and that the most senior law enforcement officials in the country have been evasive, defensive, and intemperate in their handling of the fallout. Ardent Trump supporters like Laura Loomer are warning today that the meltdown threatens to consume Trump's presidency.
When you have, people are the worst, we're the worst. Because when you have a story that is about sex and power and fame and it's lurid, right? This is like something out of a novel. And when you have a story like this, it's very hard for people to let it go. And you can ask Bill Clinton, you can ask Warren G. Harding. We can go through a long list of presidents who, when sex becomes part of the story and it becomes this sort of lurid story, it's a lot more interesting than regular corruption, and it's very hard for people to let that go.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. President Trump said this afternoon that instead of Epstein, everybody should be focused on President Biden's use of the auto pen to sign many of the pardons he issued late in his presidency. Trump calls it the biggest scandal in American history. Congressional Republicans are, of course, investigating this. President Biden says, I verbally approved all these pardons, and somebody went and used the auto pen to actually sign the documents. What do you make of all that?
I'm troubled by the trend. Do you remember when Barack Obama had to disappoint Democrats in 2009 and said, I'm not going to prosecute, we're not prosecuting Donald Rumsfeld. We're not going to prosecute Dick Cheney or Paul Wolfowitz or whomever for the Iraq invasion. They had their turn. They did what they thought was the best, but we're not going to relitigate that. We're going to move forward. And what we saw with the first Trump administration and certainly the Biden administration and now the next Trump administration is it's a self-licking ice cream cone. We just keep going back and back and back. And if they keep it up with, they will keep it up with Biden and they keep doing it. When there's a Democratic president, they're going to go back and make people take the fifth and demand testimony about Donald Trump's state of mind when he was president. And was he mentally, how was his cognitive level when he was president? And did he ever say this? And did he ever say that? Bad things lie that way. When you get into relitigating and unpacking these former things, you don't really get to the truth very often. And what you end up doing is getting stuck in a hole.
Yeah. All right, Chris Starwelt, something tells me we're not going to hear the end of either the Ida Penn or Jeffrey Epstein. So stay tuned, as they say. Thanks, Chris. Oh, by the way, I noticed on stage today, you guys were giving out gift bags to all your guests. What was in the gift? What's the swag for all the lawmakers?
Well, it's just stacks of cash. It's just hundreds, just in a stack. But my question is for you, which is we could get all of these powerful people to come. We couldn't get Elizabeth Vargas. That's
Nobody
all I'm saying.
invited me. I would have been there in a nanosecond. I would have totally come down there.
Well, next time you're coming and we're going to do one of these together.
This tape lives forever, Chris Starwelt. All right, thanks so much. In the meantime, while Jeffrey Epstein continues, for whatever reason, to be the hottest topic in Washington, D.C., much to President Trump's frustration, he does have other very big and very important issues he's focusing on. One that is arguably a lot more important to the lives of Americans, and that is cracking down on the fentanyl epidemic. Let's go right now to NewsNation's Kelly Meyer now, live for us at the White House. Kelly, the president held a big signing ceremony today on this bill that Congress passed combating fentanyl. This has been a big part of his agenda.
Yeah, certainly cracking down on this drug, a major focus for the president's agenda, and certainly a bipartisan one. So today he was able to sign this into law. He was surrounded by families who lost loved ones to the drug, and they held up photos of their lost loved ones, some giving that to the president to hold as well. Now, this bill is set to curb the illicit flow of fentanyl into the U.S. You see him signing the bill there. It would reschedule the opioid as a Schedule I drug, which could result in harsher penalties for those convicted of fentanyl-related offenses. And one Angel mom spoke to the impact of this bill. Take a listen to this.
It is a lifeline for families across America and keeping our families safe. Thank you for keeping America safe and for our children. And this is what we voted for, Mr. President.
And talking about something both Biden and Trump agreed on, the Biden administration previously backed this bill too, but it was stuck in the previous Senate, the Democrat-controlled Senate. Here's what President Trump had to say as he touted the passage today.
Today we strike a righteous blow to the drug dealers, narcotic traffickers, and criminal cartels that we've all been hearing so much about for so many years, and very little has been done. And we take a historic step toward justice for every family touched by the fentanyl scourge.
So touching on the passage and the signing of that bill, he also touted the southern border statistics that showed 0 illegal crossings in June. And he said even he doesn't believe that. And I'll mention now, too, Elizabeth, we're watching for this dinner meeting between the president and the prime minister of Qatar. We did just spot an oil exec walking into the West Wing. So we're seeing now, waiting to see if that opens up to the press. We'll let you know.
All right. Do let us know. We'll come right back to you if you got anything more to report. Kelly Meyer live from the White House for us tonight. Thank you. All right. Coming up for us, all aboard the Mamdani Express. New York City Democratic mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani goes to Washington to get other Democratic lawmakers behind his campaign and maybe his socialist message. I'll speak live with Congressman Mark Takano, who was in the meeting. And later, will East Palestine residents ever get the full truth? A watchdog group says the EPA may have botched the testing of toxic chemicals after that train derailment on purpose. That NewsNation exclusive is coming up.
NewsNation tonight. Reporter czar Tom Homan joins Chris live. What he has to say about the recent violent attacks on ICE agents. Plus, the one and only Bill O'Reilly joins Chris to break down the day's biggest headlines. Tonight on Cuomo at 8/7 Central, only on NewsNation.
After shaking up the political landscape in New York City with his upset victory in the Democratic mayoral primary, Zohran Mamdani took his message to Washington, D.C. today. But did his own party want to hear it? The self-proclaimed Democratic socialist met with a breakfast meeting with congressional lawmakers. The Democratic disruptor is trying to rally support across the ranks of a divided party. Not all are convinced that a left-leaning pro-Palestinian political neophyte is the future of the Democratic Party. As for how the day went, Mamdani seemed to think it went pretty well.
I think that we are continuing to grow our coalition. I'm sorry I have to jump on the train to make it back.
Talk to you all day.
Now, that smile and that personality, his supporters say, played a key role in the political newcomer's stunning primary win, along with his promises on the campaign trail to make New York more affordable for the working class. His Soak the Rich tax plan and pledges of free buses, subsidized groceries, and a freeze on rent resonated with Democratic primary voters. The slick TikTok videos didn't hurt either. As for today's breakfast meeting, Mamdani seemed to have won over some of his fellow Democrats before the plates were cleared.
I think he's a very personable, smart young man. It's beautiful to have someone who is so authentic. You know, that's money cannot buy that. He's bringing anybody who can see the reality of the success of his candidacy and his campaign together. Anybody that's staying out at this point instead of endorsing this incredible dynamic leader is missing an opportunity.
I think he's going to be a great mayor of New York City.
Still, not everyone is convinced. There are some key Democratic holdouts who have not endorsed the political upstart, like fellow New Yorkers, Senator Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. For more, we're joined now by Congressman Mark Takano, Democrat from California, who was at the breakfast with Mamdani this morning. Congressman, great to have you on the show. So what did you think of him?
Well, I was, his charm and his charisma did not disappoint. And it was a great opportunity for me to get to know him. And it was a wonderful meeting.
Business leaders met with Mamdani yesterday in New York City, and they were not impressed. One said that his complete lack of executive experience, his naive understanding of how the world works, and his rigidly ideological views on socialism make him dangerous. That's the business community in New York City. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't know which businessman said that, and I don't know that that's emblematic of all people who are businessmen. I can tell you that what attracted me to Mamdani and his social media was his video, Halal Inflation, where he is very much the advocate of small business people in New York City. Halal falafel vendors in New York City who can't seem to get food permits or food selling permits. It costs them $17,000 to pay somebody else who holds the permit instead of the $400 that they would pay to a city,
right,
which does not seem interested in efficiently processing their permits. I see him as a fighter for small entrepreneurs. I don't know where this anti-business idea comes. It seems very rooted in a realistic understanding of where half of New Yorkers get their employment.
Well, it comes from big business, who are the people who are quoted in these articles as saying these critical things of Mamdani. Democratic leaders Jeffries and Schumer
I think big business. I think big businessmen definitely have a different point of view from the immigrant, scrappy entrepreneur who's trying to make it
Right. Well, that is the problem, and that is the tension here as Mamdani tries to run in this city. Democratic leaders Jeffries and Schumer have both said that they've been troubled by Mamdani's repeated refusal to condemn the phrase globalize intifada, widely seen as a call for violence against Jews. Mamdani told these business leaders yesterday that he will not use that phrase going forward and will discourage others from using it. Is that enough, do you think?
Well, he may have to say more, but I am personally very, very comforted to know that he said what he said and that he is going to work with Jewish American Congressman Jerry Nadler and partner with him to combat anti-Semitism, to combat bigotry, to combat prejudice, regardless of who is the target.
But is it enough to just pledge not to say globalize intifada? Shouldn't he also condemn that?
Well, as I said, there may be more for him to do, but I think he's on the right track, and I think he's communicating where his heart and his values lie. And as I said, I was personally comforted by what he had to say.
Okay.
And that he's definitely reaching out to Jewish New Yorkers, and I think he's going to undergo a process where I think this is going to heal in time.
I want to get your response to something that a conservative columnist, Bret Stephens, wrote in the New York Times yesterday. He wrote that Republicans are thrilled that Mamdani is the Democratic nominee. Democrats remain the perfect opposition party, far left, incompetent, divided, distrusted, and on a national level, unelectable. Get ready for the GOP to run against Mamdani Democrats for several election cycles to come. Republicans are gleeful at the Democratic Party's embrace of Zoran Mamdani.
Well, I think Bret Stephens is, a bit too overjoyed, actually a lot overjoyed. I think he's generalizing, a New York, mayoral race to the entire country. New York is New York, and California's California, and Arizona's Arizona. There are Democrats of all different stripes who represent their communities in the way they do, and so I just think that's an overly broad expectation on the part of Bret Stephens.
He has made a lot of very sweeping, broad promises. Public grocery stores for everybody, but we've seen in past history that public grocery stores have failed. We've seen that free bus rides that he promised, free bus rides would decimate the public transit system's budget. Freezing the rent, many feel and fear, would cause landlords to jack up prices on all the non-rent stabilized apartments. Taxing the rich will lead the rich to move someplace else and take their taxes with them. J.P. Morgan's CEO Jamie Dimon called Mamdani a Marxist peddling, quote, ideological mush. There's another business leader for you who wasn't at the meeting yesterday and who was also very critical of Mamdani.
Well, again, big banker Jamie Dimon is projecting, I think, way too much on a man like Mamdani, who is simply standing up for small business people, making sure that they get a fair shot, indicating which side he's on in terms of making New York City more livable. Many of his ideas will have to still go through the city council, where I'm sure compromise will have to be made, and where some of his ideas are going to get through and some of them will have to be modified. So I don't think we should be afraid of democracy and the people of New York electing somebody who they feel is on their side and looking out for them, and not someone that's going to be taking phone calls from Jamie Dimon or anybody else to serve their interests.
Well, he will have a lot of work. It's not actually the city council he'll be having to deal with so much as it is the state legislature and the governor of New York, who are in charge of a lot of these things, like taxes and the MTA. We shall see. Congressman Mark Takano, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, coming up for us. Did Norfolk Southern work with the EPA to hide the truth? about toxic chemicals released after the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Well, Rich McHugh has been working on a brand new whistleblower report. It apparently says that they did, and he's live in East Palestine next. A new report from a whistleblower group appears to show just how deep the alleged East Palestine train derailment cover-up might go. The Government Accountability Project recently obtained a letter from the EPA sent to Norfolk Southern in the aftermath of the derailment. Now, this is a little wonky, so bear with me. In the letter, the EPA discusses which areas of soil should be tested for toxic chemicals. It appears they choose so-called baseline soil samples from places that were hard hit by the toxic plume of smoke. That's important because baseline is the benchmark for comparison in order to track progress. So if the benchmark is super toxic, everything else you test, like the soil in somebody's front yard, will look pretty good in comparison, even if it's also very, very toxic. So did the EPA purposely skew its data to make everything look less bad than it was? A whistleblower told NewsNation and investigative correspondent Rich McHugh that he definitely thinks that is the case. Rich joins us now live from East Palestine with more. Rich, this is a big accusation. Has the EPA or Norfolk Southern responded at all?
Hi, Elizabeth. The EPA has not responded at all. Norfolk Southern did respond, only to tell me that they would not be commenting further on this. Now, there's two big points here. We're learning that the EPA used Norfolk Southern's contractors' data, passed it off as their own, and massaged it to pass it off as their own. Number two, the big one, they were not testing, according to the experts we've spoken to, they were not testing for toxins in the right area, and there's only two scenarios of why that would be. One of it is incompetence, the other is it's intentional.
This is black and white receipts that the EPA was working with Norfolk Southern to create the outcome that Norfolk Southern wanted.
Over 2 years after the decision to burn tankers of vinyl chloride here in East Palestine, Leslie Pacey with the Government Accountability Project says this March 7, 2023 email from the EPA to Norfolk Southern exposes that the EPA relied on Norfolk Southern testing, that they told Norfolk Southern not to test for 5 compounds, and that the EPA manipulated the soil sampling plan. Independent testing expert and whistleblower Scott Smith.
They allowed Norfolk Southern to clearly handpick testing data to say, you were already contaminated. We didn't add to that contamination. It's that simple, Rich.
Stephen Petty, one of the lead experts on the giant class action suit against Norfolk Southern, says the worst part, they did not test in the right area for the dioxins, suggesting the results not accurate. For example, Petty says they didn't take into account which way the wind was blowing the day of the open burn, something they should have known to do.
If they knew that the winds were actually either calm or to the other direction primarily, then they were inverting background and foreground, which would make you conclude no problem here. But maybe more insidiously, it would call into question the entire decision-making process to go forward with the burn in the first place.
That's a big deal.
I think so. I think it should have been stopped as soon as the winds were the wrong direction or calm, because you've evacuated people in the wrong direction.
Petty cannot reveal his test results or analysis and has a non-disclosure agreement, but says the bottom line, the EPA and Norfolk Southern did not test in the right area for dioxins and may have done that on purpose.
Do you think, in your expert opinion, that the EPA and Norfolk Southern were doing everything that they could to get to the truth of exposure levels for East Palestine?
No, I don't think so.
Now, Elizabeth, Petty says that the conversation is heading in one direction, is what did the EPA and the responsible parties know about the wind shift during the burn that day? And it will ultimately tell us if this was intentional or not. Back to you.
All right, Rich McHugh, Stella reporting yet again, live from East Palestine, Ohio.
Thank you.
Coming up for us, President Trump says a popular soda is about to get a Maha makeover. What does the food babe think about Coca-Cola's pivot to real sugarcane? I'll ask her next. And remember, download our NewsNation app for the latest news and the top stories of the night. President Trump says Coca-Cola is getting a Maha makeover. He posted to Truth Social, writing, "I've been asking and speaking to Coca-Cola about using cane sugar in Coke in the United States, and they've agreed to do so." Now, tinkering with Coca-Cola and its formula has proven disastrous in the past. Back in 1985, the company introduced New Coke. Remember that? A sweeter version, which sparked such vehement consumer backlash, the original formula was reinstated just 79 days later. That was before the Maha movement changed the game, however. Now, Coke would be just the latest food company to drop unhealthy ingredients. Welch's Fruit Snacks and dozens of ice cream producers recently promised to do away with all artificial dyes. Proponents of the Make America Healthy Again movement say these dyes and these sugars are leading to chronic illnesses in children and obesity in adults. FDA Commissioner Dr. Marty Makary joined us for the first ever Hill Nation Summit earlier today, where he made some news about the food pyramid.
Pyramid is going to change. We're rewriting them right now with USDA, and you're going to see an end of the 70-year demonization of natural saturated fat in the United States.
My next guest has been at the forefront of the Maha movement. Vani Hari is a food activist and social influencer known as the Food Babe. She's also the founder of Truvani, a plant-based food company. Great to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
So what do you make of Coca-Cola and President Trump making this announcement that Coke has agreed to use cane sugar instead of chemicals to sweeten its beverages?
Well, first off, when I saw his tweet, I was speechless, to tell you the truth. I couldn't believe it. Just 6 months ago, I was on a stage talking about how Coca-Cola is made differently in Spain, in Italy, in France, in Australia, in the UK, and how they're using real cane sugar there. But here in the United States, they're using genetically engineered high fructose corn syrup that's designed to withstand heavy doses of glyphosate or Roundup being sprayed on it. So any amount less of high fructose corn syrup in the American diet is a good thing for Americans, especially when it comes to cancer risk, because we know glyphosate has been implicated to cause cancer. So this is one of the biggest Maha wins to date, in my opinion, because this means less genetically engineered high fructose corn syrup getting in American diets.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And, you know, when you talk about glyphosate, when you were on the show last time we were talking about it, it's in everything. All of, our breads are, I started checking labels after you were on our show, and it literally, it's impossible to buy things that don't contain it.
That's right. Well, it's one thing you will not be able to find on the label, unfortunately. It's sprayed on our food. It's sprayed on corn, soybeans in this country. It's sprayed on oats, wheats, and beans right before it's harvested. You know, Americans have 500% more exposure to pesticides than other countries in the world. We use 25% of the world's pesticides, even though we're only 3% of the population in this world. So this is something we have to definitely look at. And by getting Coca-Cola, one of the biggest companies of the world and one of the most popular drinks in America, to stop using high fructose corn syrup and going to real cane sugar,
it's a big
that's
deal.
going to reduce that in American diet. So, you know, at the end of the day, we know Coca-Cola is not a healthy drink. You know, it's still got sugar. It's still got caramel coloring level 4 in it, which is also considered a carcinogen.
Right.
However, we need to reduce the toxic load that's being, assaulted on the Americans right now.
It's not a great thing to drink, but the reality is millions of Americans drink it. What about the food pyramid? We heard this big announcement at the Hill Nation Forum today that the FDA commissioner is going to change the food pyramid. What are you expecting to see there?
Yeah, I think just the words "eat more real food" and the dietary guidelines will have a tremendous effect on everything that is being produced in this country, because even whether you agree with what the government says about what we're eating, it trickles down into our schools, into our hospitals, into our other government-funded programs. And so we're being affected by those guidelines regardless, because that's what's being served to us when we're in these institutions. So it's really important that we get the truth about what has been done to our food, how our food has changed in the last 50 years, how it's become ultra processed, designed to make us eat more than we should, designed in a way that provides more, food-like substances and ingredients that aren't nutritious and don't provide a nutritional value to our diet.
Yeah, 70% of what our kids eat is ultra-processed food. That is not a good thing.
We need more access to real food, and this is why I started my company, Truvani. I wanted ingredients that people can trust, ingredients that people can recognize, and we need more food companies doing that.
All right, Vani Hari, great to have you back. Thanks so much. All right, coming up for us, Chris Cuomo is about to speak with border czar Tom Homan about several headlines made at our first ever Hill Nation Summit today. Chris joins me next with a preview. All right, Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, you're going to speak with border czar Tom Homan in just a moment. Fix your hair. It's okay. It looks good.
I paid a lot of money for this hairpiece.
Did you?
Pure ferret.
Okay, you got every dollar's worth out of it. You got a lot to discuss with Homan. Attacks are up dramatically on ICE agents who are out there trying to do their jobs. Also, criticism up about arrests of farmers or farm workers, construction workers, that kind of thing. What are you going to focus on tonight?
I got a style and a substance question for Mr. Homan.
Okay.
The substance is, as our sons would say, are you doing too much? Are you trying too hard when it comes to how broad a net and how invasive? And on the style side, when he was telling this heckler the other night to come meet him behind the stage, was he really going to beat that guy's ass? And what does he think that message is? And is that where we are in the country right now, that maybe might does make right on some level?
Maybe he was just going to talk to him and change his mind.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
He was going to change his mind with a left hook to make him think a little different, a little attitude adjustment. That's what was coming.
Okay. Looking forward to seeing the interview. Have a great show, Chris.